Today we begin a new series of lessons in the Old Testament on the life of Elijah. He was a prophet. He was widely considered the greatest prophet, perhaps, and over the coming weeks we're going to see why, but not today. How many of you have read the book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People? 7 of you. Okay, all right, good, that's fine. It's a good book. You should consider it sometime. However, one of the habits of highly effective people is to begin with the end in mind. So today, as we start this series on the life of Elijah, we're going to begin with the end in mind. We're going to begin with the end of Elijah's story, and you'll know why as we get to the end today. If you're taking notes on your program, I want you to write a word now at the takeaway blank at the bottom. Just write the word who, okay? Who. It'll make sense as we go along today. And if not, hopefully through some prayer this week, it will make very clear sense with you what we're talking about. But why study an Old Testament character? We're a Christian church. We follow Jesus. The physical life of Jesus here on this earth is recorded for us in the New Testament. Why would we look into the Old Testament? Well, 1 Corinthians, Paul, writing in 1 Corinthians, says this about the Old Testament, chapter 10, verses 11 and 12. These things happened to them as examples and were written down as warnings for us. Talking about Old Testament things, Old Testament stories, Old Testament truths, Old Testament principles. These things happened to them as examples and were written down as warnings for us, on whom the culmination of ages has come. Again, this is just real simple as I can put it. That's talking about Jesus and the idea that we are living in the last days. So if you think you're standing firm, be careful that you don't fall. Things from the Old Testament are recorded for us as examples to us, as warnings to us, as principles of truth for us as well. So when it comes to the Old Testament, we're going to look, we're going to study, we're going to read things that happened to them, these stories, these truths. They've been written as examples for us, as warnings. Now, we don't live by the Old Testament law, do we? We don't sacrifice sheep, right? And men, we don't grow out our sideburns really long. I mean, unless that's your thing and you want to do that. We don't shave our wife's head unless maybe you're an Orthodox Jew. We don't avoid bacon. Amen. Some of you do, and that's okay. God bless you. But many of us, most of us in the room, run to bacon, right? We enjoy bacon. But we learn from the Old Testament. These are examples for us. So periodically here at this church, we do an Old Testament character study on someone from the Old Testament. The story of Elijah is an extremely valuable story for many reasons. So over the next several weeks, we're going to learn, we're going to grow together, we're going to grow our faith in God as we examine Elijah's extraordinary life. So today we're going to fast forward to the end of his story, and I want to show you this. I want to show you that no matter how great your life is, and I know some of you have great lives. Some of you, just kidding. But many of you in the room have a great life. You have an awesome life. In fact, I would say all of us in the room, big picture thinking, have a great life when we look around the world. But no matter how great your life is, no matter how awesome your life is, what I need you to understand is your life is not all about your life. Your life is not all about your life. My life is not all about my life. Now, when we were much younger, when we were very young, we were immature, right? And babies are the most immature, right? I mean, and let me just say this. We have a lot of young couples that are bringing children into the world, and it's an exciting time to see that happen here at the church. I heard about that. Hey, the day will come where you will, well, can I get like emotional? I don't get emotional, you know me, but someone told me, you stay at a church long enough, you will live through helping to marry someone You will see them birth children. You will maybe help get the decision to the point where those children come to faith in Jesus. You will be there at many seasons of life. And I'm even 7 years in here at the church, I'm seeing those kinds of things happen. It's an exciting, I got off track. It's an exciting time to see young couples having kids and putting down roots here at this church and part of this church. Back to babies. Babies are the most immature, aren't they? I mean, babies bring nothing to the table. They eat, they sleep, they cry, they poop, they make messes. You have to do everything for them. You have to bathe them and dress them and spoon. They're babies, that's right. You have to spoon feed them. They're considered immature. When someone grows up and is still thinking all about them, we consider that person immature. But as a person grows up and they start maybe taking care more of themselves, and even they begin to take care of other people around them, that we would say, well, they're maturing. They're growing up. They're getting more mature. And when they grow up and they take care of themselves and they're taking care of others, that's a mature person, right? Those of you who have raised children, maybe you have teenagers. You remember the day when that teenager all of a sudden did something for someone else. Maybe it was for you, and no one even asked them to do that. And you're like, what is happening? This is amazing. Thank you, Lord. And some of you are thinking, well, no, that hasn't happened yet. And they're 35. But someday we're holding out hope. It's supposed to happen, right? We're supposed to grow up and mature and become more independent and more responsible for ourselves and responsible for other people. In every life, there comes a moment when we begin to shift gears, and it's not as much thinking about, what about me? Help me. Do for me. This needs to be about my wants and my desires, and we start helping out someone else. We start pouring into the next generation. Chances are every person in church today has had someone or more than one person who has helped to shape and affect who you are and to mold you into the person that you are today. Maybe they didn't officially, formally mentor you, but through your interaction with them, they helped you, they guided you, they had influence in your life. I've had many people through the course of my years. Of course, my mom and dad would be at the very top of that list, but there are several other people, a few of you are even in the room, but several other people who have helped shape who I am today. Some unlikely, some unexpected people, in fact. Back when Dana and I were engaged to be married, I thought, well, I'm getting married. I need to get like a job. I had a job at the time, but I was selling tickets in the box office at a movie theater in Joplin, Missouri, North Star 14 screen theater. And it paid the bills for cheap dates because we could go to the movie all the time for free. But now that I'm going to get married, it's like I need to get a real job, a job that will pay, like housing and car and food and insurance. And we were both full-time students. We were getting married between our sophomore and junior year. So I applied several places around town, and I got an interview at Lowe's in Joplin, Missouri. So I dressed up for the interview, put on slacks and a shirt and a tie. Those days I think are gone now. But I wear a tie on like 3 occasions, and you can probably figure out what those are. But either way, went there, shirt and a tie, and I'm sitting down answering all these questions, and hey, what type of wage did you have in mind? And so I think I shared minimum wage, maybe like a quarter more than minimum wage. I mean, I'm like 20 years old, in college. I just needed a job. So Heather, the assistant store manager, she actually offered me $1 more than what I'd said, and I thought, hey, this is great. It was probably like $7.50 an hour at the time. But began working my illustrious career at Lowe's Home Improvement Warehouse in Joplin, Missouri. Over the next 2 years, my junior year and senior year, I worked full-time, but I was mentored and shaped and molded by a few different assistant store managers in that store, in that setting. I started out as a cashier, and I remember very clearly one day, there's no customers in line, so what do you do if you're a cashier, someone checking people out, and there's no one in line? Will you just kind of stand there and lean on the merchandise waiting for people to come by, right? No, the store manager, Chuck, came by and he said, hey, if there's no customers around, you make yourself busy. You straighten up the shelf, you straighten up your area, you straighten up the front end of the store, you make yourself busy. We're not paying you to stand there and just lean against the shelf. Well, over time, I worked at the customer service desk and I interacted with customers at the customer service desk at Lowe's, and it was a very insightful, enlightening time as I was, again, mentored and shaped on how to do customer service. Again, I think some of those days are gone. Does anyone work at Lowe's? I love Lowe's. Unless I am right around the corner from Home Depot, I will always drive to Lowe's to do my home improvement shopping. It just is what it is. So I love Lowe's. They took great care of me. But I can stand on the stage today and I can say this: I would probably not be able to do what I do, the calling that God has given me in ministry, were it not for some of the experiences, at least not as effective, not for some of the experiences I had while working at Lowe's underneath the manager and the assistant managers there, and being shaped and molded and mentored when it comes to customer service and stepping out of my comfort level. And they're not pastors. They're not in ministry. But the skills that I learned there, the experiences I had have helped me through the years in many, many ways. For you might have someone, and they're not in your field of work, but maybe they have helped to shape you and form you into who you are now. And their life has transcended into your life, their influence, their lessons, their counsel. So today's message is called, My Life is Not All About My Life. Again, your life is not all about your life. God made you for something bigger than just your life can contain. So God has given to you influence, and He has taught you lessons, and He has given you experiences, and those are going to grow, and if you will allow Him for His purpose, they can live beyond you. Your influence should not end the day that they throw dirt on your coffin. Your influence should live on. It's supposed to live on. Now, that day is not here yet, but it's coming. It's coming for every single one of us. So we have this window of opportunity that we call life, in which God can do some amazing things. And part of that is to make investments in the lives of other people. So some of you might be thinking, well, I don't need to do that. I mean, I'm doing okay. I don't need the help. I mean, I can carry on with my responsibilities. And that can go that way for a while when we're in our prime. But for most of us, there comes a point where you have to start offloading some things, downloading some information, some tasks, some experiences, some life lessons. Over the past 5 years here at the church, we've been blessed to see some growth. We've been able to hire staff periodically as we've reached certain growth marks. But there was a point a few years ago when there were just very few of us in the office. And there would be times when I would be in the office alone, or just a couple of us, and I was getting some calls from the Slingshot group, which helps staff churches. And one day, Jay, my friend now, he calls the church, and I answer the phone. Hello, Northeast Christian Church. He says, Seth? I said, yes. This is Seth. How can I help you? Seth, why are you answering the phone? Because it rang. How can I help you? It was a different season and a different time. And I could handle all of that and balance all of that and all the different tasks, but there has come different moments over the last few years where I have had to forcibly offload some things and let some other people do some things. There was a time I could keep up with it all, but there came a point for me, and there clearly has come a point for Elijah, that God has called him on to do something else. And so God says this to Elijah, 1 Kings chapter 19, verse 16. Also, anoint Jehu, son of Nimshi, king over Israel, and anoint Elisha, son of Shaphat, from Abel-Meholah, to succeed you as prophet. Just a quick trick for you. J, Elijah, comes before S, Elisha, so you can always remember Elijah came before Elisha, especially over the next few weeks as we are interacting with both of them, okay? So God says it's time for you to start mentoring somebody else. Your time's not over, but it's time for you to begin investing in someone else. Elijah has been God's key prophet for some time. His time wasn't over yet, but it's coming. And we need to recognize that we can't wait until God is done with us before we start investing in somebody else. You have to start before it's over if you want to do this right. So Elijah is he's an ordinary, normal, everyday guy that did a lot of wonderful things. God used him in extraordinary ways. But much of the time, Elijah was alone. Much of the time that, can we pull that one up? Much of the time that he is out doing things that God has him doing, he's very much alone. Elisha was not by his side. I think that was part of the problem, and you'll see that in the weeks to come. There are moments in our lives where we can get along without much help. I can do this. I can shoulder this. I can handle this. I can take care of this. But eventually we need to take the lessons, the influence, the experiences that God has given to us and help someone else with those things, that it will go beyond us. And so I think we need to learn 3 truths that I want to share with you this morning. Truth number one, I must make an investment in someone else. I must make an investment in someone else. If we're going to do this right, it's not all about us, then in the prime of our lives, we need to start making an investment in other people, in people who will outlive us. Now, if you are in the prime of your life, I know this about you, you're probably right now thinking, I don't have time for that. I have so much to do, and you're giving me something else to do. I don't have time to do anything else. And while I don't have this mastered, so don't mishear me here, what I have come to discover is this, and it's biblical as well. I'll show you in a moment. When you invest in someone else, it helps you. When you invest in someone else, it helps you. When you give away what God has given to you, when you pour into somebody else, it gives you opportunity to be poured back into. It will benefit you as well. Proverbs chapter 11, verse 25. Solomon says, a generous person will prosper. Whoever refreshes others will be refreshed. This happened to Elijah. You'll see this in the weeks to come. Elijah was kind of getting burnt out. He was scared. He was tired. God renewed him by giving him a new assignment. And sometimes in our lives, we can get in a bit of a rut. We can get in a bit of a place where we're doing the same thing every day. Maybe it's not working like we thought it should or would. And all of a sudden, God may give us a new assignment or tweak things just a little bit where we're at. And that new assignment gives us new life. Changes up our pace a little bit. If any of you have ever trained for a distance race of any sort, you know that all of those training protocols have you running different distances and different speeds at different times through your training. You're supposed to change it up. You're not supposed to go out every day and run the same distance, the same pace. You're supposed to change it up because it works different muscles. And then when the race day comes, you'll be able to run faster and run farther. When God changes up your assignment, it breathes new life into you, breathes new wind into your sails. And Elijah's new assignment was to make a new investment in this younger man named Elisha. So Elisha, 1 Kings 19:19. So Elijah went from there and found Elisha, son of Shaphat. He was plowing with 12 yoke of oxen, and he himself was driving the 12th pair. Elijah went up to him and threw his cloak around him. So let me tell you what this means on the front end. We can understand very quickly, Elisha's a rich farmer. He's doing okay. He's got 12 pair of oxen. He's plowing with one of them, so chances are he's got 11 other people working for him, maybe more animals. He's doing okay. The Bible says Elijah goes up to Elisha, takes his cloak, and puts it around Elisha's shoulders. Do you know what that means? Well, picture for a moment one of your kids is playing basketball in the gym, in the league, okay? And you're sitting on the front row, and you're cheering them on. And at one point, the referee comes running down the court, and he stops right in front of you, and he pulls off his striped shirt, and he puts it over you, and he goes running out the door. Do you know what that means? Well, you're now the referee, right? It's not exactly what's going on, but it's pretty close here. Elijah wasn't quitting and running out the door, but he was saying, Elisha, you're going to be taking over for me. There's going to be some mentoring, and that's a good thing. It's going to take a little while, and that's a good thing, but you've been chosen now. You're going to rise up, and I'm going to mentor you. It's a great privilege. Imagine whatever line of work you're in, and I don't know all of your careers and professions, but imagine whatever line of work you are in, that your hero in that line of work maybe shows up at your doorstep one day and says, hey, I would like to mentor you. You would probably say, thank you, yes, please. If you're a football coach and Bill Belichick shows up on your front door, and maybe that's a bad example, I don't know, but just run with me for a moment, and he says, I would like to mentor you. You might say, please don't tell anyone, but yes, please, thank you. You understand, I hope you understand what I'm saying there. It was an honor. It was an honor for Elisha to be mentored by Elijah. There are some pastors around the country that are a little farther down the road than I, who I have a few chances throughout the year, a few opportunities at some conferences and other settings to sit at a table with them and hear from them and learn from them and be mentored by them. A few months ago, I received an email from one of them saying, hey, we would like to invite you and your wife down to our area with a few other couples for kind of some mentoring, some encouragement, that sort of a thing. And I was humbled and honored and at the same time distraught because the 2 dates they gave me, I had 2 locked down commitments that I just did not feel I could possibly get out of without doing, I shouldn't get out of them. So I said, I cannot make these 2 dates. However, can you keep my name on the list for next year sometime? Yes, we'd be glad to do that, and we'll see you soon. Enjoy, these 2 things you've got going on. Humbled, honored to be approached, to be mentored by people like that. Maybe you have experienced that before. Again, it's an honor for Elisha to be mentored by Elijah. So he's got Elijah's jacket on now, and Elisha says, I'll do that. I will do this. The Bible says he took the oxen and he slaughtered them. And he took his farming equipment, which much of it would have been made out of wood, and he burnt it, started fires. So he makes barbecue for the whole neighborhood and says, hey, celebration time. I am transitioning on to this mentoring ministry with Elijah. And so, going away party, great event. And then he followed Elijah, and Elijah spent the next few years preparing him. So again, the word in the takeaway blank, if you wrote that earlier, who, this is what I want you to be thinking about. Who are you mentoring in life? Who are you investing in? All of us need to be investing in someone. All of us do. And maybe you're thinking, well, I don't really have the time. I got my things going on, and it's so difficult to keep up with my things, and and I need to do this, and I need to do that, and me. Is that too much? I hope not. Someone once told me, we make time for what's important to us. I want to encourage you, all of us ought to be investing in mentoring someone. Well, I don't know who. I have my kids. Well, yes, your kids, definitely your kids, if you have children, ought to be on your list. But you should probably have people beyond your children on your list as well, people who you're pouring into. And maybe you're thinking, well, I just don't know who that should be. Here's what I do know. When you say yes to God on this, God, I'm at a season in life where I think I ought to be investing in mentoring. If you're a man, some other young men. If you're a woman, some other young women. I feel like I ought to be investing in mentoring some other young people. If you ask God that, God, I want you to show me, I want you to help me here, God will do that. People will come out of the woodwork. God will bring people into your life for you to mentor, for you to invest in. And you might be thinking, okay, well, I'm going to trust in that. I'm going to be praying about that this week, but I don't even know what would I even do once we get together? I'm going to take them out to lunch or dinner or coffee. What would we even do? If they come over to your house, well, I have an answer for that. 6 quick questions. They're on your program. Put them in the shape of a card so you can cut that out and take it with you if you would like. But these questions are, I think they can form the groundwork, the outline for a great mentoring conversation and conversations beyond that. You can repeat these every single conversation you have. So number 1, how are you doing? How are you doing? Number 2, what are you celebrating? It's a great question to ask anybody. What are you celebrating in life right now? Where's the joy coming from in your life? Number 3, what is your biggest challenge? Number 4, what are you doing about it? Number 5, how can I help you? And number 6, how can I pray for you? And then at the end of the conversation, pray with them. And I guarantee you, at the end of 45 minutes or an hour of conversation, they will be thanking you for your time. If you sit and work through these questions, it can be that simple. Now, we don't hear much about Elisha for the next little while. He seems to kind of be living in obscurity in the minor leagues, waiting for when the time was right. So that leads to truth number 2. Truth number 2, I must get humble and stay humble. I talk about humility and the significance of humility in life pretty regular. At least I feel like I do. We need to get humble. We need to stay humble. We need to seek humility in our life. On both sides of this, both the mentor and the mentee need to have some humility in order for this to work. Elisha is picked for a very honorable, very public position. And immediately, as you'll see over the next few weeks, unless you're familiar with his story, immediately he kind of goes into living in obscurity. I mean, he might have been thinking, I barbecued my oxen. I burnt my equipment. I burnt the ships. Not really, but you know what I'm saying, right? I mean, voided the warranty. There's no turning back. And now what am I doing? I'm not doing anything. When's my turn to shine? It takes humility. We need to remember that good things often start small. Now, I may sound old in saying this, but I have noticed, and I was there once, I have noticed some young people leave the home, they get out of school or college, and they kind of size up mom and dad, and it's like, well, I want that house, or that new car, or that job, or that pay, or whatever that may be, and mom and dad have that, why can't I have that? Years ago, I was back at my home church. We were up from Mexico, and we were sitting in a young adults class, and the teacher that day, his name was Jim Mosley, and he was giving a class on finance, and he was talking about being wise with your money and that sort of thing. He's an older teacher, he and his wife both, their kids were gone, and he said this in the middle of the class. He said, yeah, we're at a stage of life where we buy new cars. We can do that, and some people get that, some people don't, but he said, we buy new cars. And he's talking to a room of like 20-somethings. We buy new cars so that people like you can buy used cars. And there's truth there, right? I mean, somebody's got to buy the new car. But sometimes young people, we feel like, I ought to be able to have that and have that now. It does sometimes, but usually it doesn't happen that way. Mom and dad have been slaving away in the daily grind for 30, 40, 50 years and planning and saving and pursuing. And so we've got to have some humility and recognize that sometimes or oftentimes good things start small. We can't have a lot of pride in this. It takes time. Now, I don't know if you've picked up on this, but it seems to me that those around us who are constantly learning and curious and working hard and learning from others are those who tend to be the most effective in life. But those who have arrived, those who have nothing to learn, those who are unteachable, not always, but oftentimes are those who struggle in life, in personal relationships, in holding down a job. They think they have nothing left to learn. There's too much pride there. You can learn anything. You can learn from anyone, even a young child. That's biblical too. You can learn from anyone if you're humble enough. So we need to humble ourselves. One of the learnings that we have to capture is great things don't always start in a big way. Sometimes they start small, and God is okay with that. Zechariah chapter 4, verse 10 says this, "Do not despise these small beginnings, for the Lord rejoices to see the work begin." Just to get started, just to get going. Here's a quote for you this morning. If you think you're too big for small things, you're too small for big things. If you think you're too big for small things, you're too small for big things. You cannot be a proud person and be fully used by God. So just like Elisha, all of us have to go through a time of obscurity in life, perhaps, when things don't always feel like they're going to work out, but that's okay. God is doing a work in us in those times. In fact, oftentimes that's when he does his best work. When it feels like things aren't working out, God is at work. To be red-shirted for a season, to sit out a season, to sit on the sidelines, those are the times when God is able to test our heart. It's during those times he's able to do his best work. So maybe you've dreamt of doing big and grand things and it just hasn't worked out. Maybe this quote from Martin Luther King Jr. will help you. If I cannot do great things, I can do small things in a great way. If I cannot do great things, I can do small things in a great way. So give your best no matter what it is. Jesus has said on a few occasions in the New Testament, if you are faithful with little things, you'll be faithful with much more. If you're faithful with a few things, you'll be given much more. And sometimes people are, well, they have a little bit and they think, well, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Oh, it matters because you're being graded on how you're handling the little things, the simple things. If you can't handle $500, you won't handle $500,000. So you have to learn to handle the little things. So if God can trust us with little things, he will promote you. He will make sure that you get bigger things. But you have to have humility, do the smaller things in a great way, and watch this principle take effect. On the other side of this equation is the mentor. If you're the mentor like Elijah was to Elisha, you have to be humble enough to take the time to do this. It might be the very last thing that you want to do. Nobody has time for that, right? But we've got to make time for this. Everybody needs to make it. It is that important that each and every one of us take time to invest in other people. Truth number 3, I must honor God all the way through transition. I must honor God all the way through the transition. Transitions are tough. There's always a point in a mentoring relationship or in a transition of sorts when it has the potential to be in a God dishonoring place, to not be God honoring in that moment. Sadly, I have seen this played out on numerous occasions where someone is rising up and the mentee is growing, and maybe all of a sudden they think that they know more than the mentor, and maybe they make their own decisions, and maybe they're right, maybe they're not, but you understand there's the potential, it doesn't have to, but the potential for things to get to a not God-honoring place. Those of you with children, this is, have you ever had your kids, this happen with your kids? They're growing up, and they ask, hey, I really want to do this, and you would say to them, I don't think that's a really good idea. I really don't think you should do that. And they go ahead and do that anyway, and it works. Ever seen that? So a few months ago, my son and I were out mountain biking here at the Lunch Loops, and there's a trail called Eagle Wing, and there's a very technical feature, and I took a video of this because, Dad, I really want to ride this. I'm like, I don't know that this is a good idea, and so the angle of this doesn't give it justice, doesn't do it justice. So watch this 7-second clip. I know it looks like nothing, but I tell you, that hill has got to be like this. It's ridiculous. And any of you that have ridden out there might recognize that feature. And I watched him do this like nothing, and I was like, lucky. I've not cleared that feature, but you have kids and you know what it's like when they want to do something. I don't know if this is a good idea. Elijah tells Elisha that he's going to be leaving. He's going to be taken up in a chariot into heaven. 2 Kings chapter 2, verses 1 through 6. We're going to read quite a bit here for a moment. When the Lord was about to take Elijah up to heaven in a whirlwind, Elijah and Elisha were on their way from Gilgal. Elijah said to Elisha, stay here. You might circle that. Stay here if you take notes in your Bible. Stay here. The Lord has sent me to Bethel. But Elisha said, as surely as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you. So they went down to Bethel. Next screen. The company of the prophets at Bethel came out to Elisha and asked, do you know that the Lord is going to take your master from you today? Yes, I know, Elisha replied. So be quiet. Then Elijah said to him, stay here. You might circle that again. Stay here. Elisha, the Lord has sent me to Jericho. And he replied, as surely as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you. So they went to Jericho. The company of the prophets at Jericho went up to Elisha and asked him, do you know that the Lord is going to take your master from you today? Yes, I know, he replied, so be quiet. Then Elijah said to him, stay here. Again, you might circle that. The Lord has sent me to the Jordan. And he replied, as surely as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you. So the two of them walked on. You see what's happening here? Elijah tells Elisha, stay here. Elisha doesn't do what he's told. The mentee is no longer listening and giving heed to the mentor. That happens. Sometimes things get to that point. Now I can almost guarantee you this. I'm certain that when Elijah went to meet his maker, he was grateful that Elisha was by his side. Verse 9, 2 Kings chapter 2. When they'd crossed, Elijah said to Elisha, tell me, what can I do for you before I'm taken from you? Let me inherit a double portion of your spirit, Elisha replied. In other words, he's saying, I want to be twice the prophet you are. Now, if you have any difficulty with truth number 2, getting humble and staying humble, you're going to have difficulty with this type of request. I want to be twice the prophet you are. I want to be twice the man that you are. I want to be twice the woman that you are. I want to be twice effective in this or that than you are. But if you're in it for the right reason, if you're in this mentoring thing for the right reason, then your heart is going to say, I hope you are. I hope you go way beyond where we've been. I hope you go way beyond what I've done. I mean, you do. You want whoever comes after you to start life-giving and godly families and effective businesses and churches and to live productive and God-fearing, Holy Spirit-dependent, Jesus-following lives. You want them to make a bigger splash. And their doing so is not dishonoring to you. It's not saying that you weren't good enough. In fact, it's them trying to honor you by getting to the next level. So when it comes to this church, when it comes to this generation, we want our ceiling to be the next generation's floor. Does that make sense? We want the levels that we're able to reach through God's favor and His blessing to be their base, their floor. We want to hand them the baton and watch them run, right? We want those we pour our lives into to outdo us, to go even further, to have better ideas, to have better relationships, to have more favor with God, to learn to change lives, people's lives for the glory of God in ways that we can't even imagine. To change the world. That's what we ought to desire for the next generation. So Elisha asks Elijah for a double portion. Here's Elijah's reply, verses 9 and 10. When they'd crossed, Elijah said to Elisha, tell me, what can I do for you before I'm taken from you? Well, let me inherit a double portion of your spirit, Elisha replied. You've asked a difficult thing, Elijah said. Yet if you see me when I'm taken from you, it will be yours. Otherwise, it will not be. A wise mentor recognizes that while they can invest in the mentee, it is still up to God to appoint and anoint. And the Bible tells us a chariot comes out of nowhere, separates the mentor from the mentee, and then Elijah is taken up to heaven. Elisha saw it happen. That's God's sign saying he would have a double portion. So everyone has been following Elijah all this time, and now they're ready, they're prepared, they're willing to follow Elisha. But there's still this sense of loyalty to Elijah, the predecessor. So the people said, well, we want to go find his body. We heard what you said, we understand that, but we know he's gone, we want to go find his body. And Elisha says, he went to heaven in a chariot. There is no body. Yeah, we understand that, but still, we want to go looking and searching and we want to find his body. Elisha says, there's no body. He got in a chariot. He went to heaven. Yeah, okay, but we want to go find his body. It kind of goes back and forth for a little while, and then this happens, verse 17. But they persisted until he was too embarrassed to refuse. So he said, send them. And they sent 50 men who searched for 3 days, but did not find him. A wise mentee is not offended by respect shown to their mentor. And if you're a mentee, like somebody is mentoring you, for a responsibility, you're likely to experience some time where people continue to bring up stories and celebration and all of that about your mentor, about how perfect your mentor was. And that's okay. Honor God through the process. Lose the pride. Here's the takeaway this week. Who are you investing in to grow to their maximum potential? Who are you investing in to grow to their maximum potential? I believe it is my job as a pastor of this church to raise up, to mentor and teach and encourage you, to raise up and mentor and teach and encourage others so that this church has a future. So that this church that it lasts beyond you, that it lasts beyond me. Again, my life is not all about my life. Your life is not all about your life. It's up to us to regularly, constantly be investing in the next generation, in others. Jesus made an investment in the next generation. He made an investment in his disciples, a rough bunch of guys, and in doing so, they turned the world upside down. I believe the people who are coming after us in this church, if we do what God has called us to do, are capable of continuing to turn the world upside down. But we've got to start investing in them in a big way. Would you stand with me this morning?